In this chapter, we turn toward one of the most fundamental questions of all. Who are you, really, beyond your name, your history, your roles, and the story your thoughts tell about you? This episode invites you to explore whether the I you identify with is who you truly are, or something you once learned to become, and what might become possible if that image begins to soften. Let's begin.
The more we talk about who I am, the less certain I seem to become. And strangely, it doesn't feel like a loss, or something bad, but rather the opposite.
That sounds like something more real is finally being given space.
Who am I really, beyond my name, my history, and what I do?
That is one of the deepest questions a human being can ask. And it's not answered by listing facts about yourself. You are not your name, your job, your education, or your past. Those are descriptions, like the clothes you are wearing, not your essence.
That's an interesting metaphor, comparing it to clothing.
To discover who you are, you don't add more information. You gently peel away what you are not, one layer at a time, until you come closer to something authentic within you, something that lies beneath the story your thoughts have created.
If I remove my job, my achievements, and even my past, what is left?
At first, the mind becomes uneasy. It searches for something to hold on to. But if you stay with the question instead of rushing to answer it, you may notice something that is already present. Something that does not need to prove itself. Something that simply is, and has always been there.
Is there something in me that notices my thoughts, rather than being them?
Indeed. And the moment you notice a thought, you are already more than that thought. Thoughts come and go. But the one who notices them remains. It does not argue or demand attention. Yet it is always there. Let's pause for a moment. Notice one thought that appears, and notice that you are noticing it. Nothing to change or solve. Just notice and be with it.
Then what is it inside me that says, I?
That is an important question. What we usually call I is often a mental reference point, a way to organize experience. It is useful. But that does not mean it is who you truly are. It may be closer to a tool than to the truth of what you are.
Do you think the I could be something I learned, rather than something I truly am?
Yes, my son. Just as you learned language, rules, and roles. You learn to refer to yourself in a certain way. That doesn't make it wrong. It simply means it's not the whole story.
You once mentioned how children first use their own name before saying I. Why does that matter?
Because it shows that the sense of I develops over time. At first, the child experiences life directly. Later, the child learns to see themselves as a separate entity, someone who must be defined, protected, and recognized. That shift is useful. But it also plants the seed of confusion.
Could the I be a role I once needed? To belong? To be seen? To survive?
Very much so. As a child, you needed a sense of me. To navigate relationships, expectations, and safety. That role helped you exist in the world. But what once helped you does not have to rule or limit you forever.
So if that role was necessary back then, does it still need to run my life now?
That is an important question. Many adults continue living from strategies they needed as children, not because they choose to, but because they never questioned them. Awareness gives you choice.
What happens if I hold too tightly to who I think I am?
Then life begins to feel threatening. Disagreement, criticism, or change can feel like personal attacks, not because you are in danger, but because the image of yourself feels fragile. The tighter you hold on, the greater the inner tension, and the stronger the need to defend, even when there is no real threat.
But why does not knowing who I am feel so frightening?
Because the mind equates certainty with safety. Not knowing feels like losing control. But that fear belongs to the image your thoughts have created, not to what you truly are.
Could not knowing actually be freedom?
Indeed. Not knowing creates space. And space is the foundation for discovering what is real. Freedom often begins where the illusion of certainty ends.
Is there something in me that remains unchanged, even as everything else changes?
There is. It is the quiet sense of being. Not the story of who you are, but the simple fact that you are.
Then discovering who I am is less about defining, and more about allowing, and about daring to let go of the image I thought I was.
Indeed. You don't find yourself by building a better story. You come closer to yourself by becoming more aware and letting go of what you are not.
That feels relieving. As if I don't have to protect something that was never really solid to begin with. As if there's more space.
Very good. What you truly are does not need to be defended or proven. But this is only the beginning. Because when you stop living from an image of yourself, a new question naturally arises. How do you live when you no longer need to protect who you think you are?
That resonates. And feels like an important question. It's clearly very liberating, but at the same time I'm so used to defending who I am, that it almost feels empty, or in some way even threatening, to no longer defend who I am. And if I no longer try to defend who I think I am, who am I then in relation to others?
One of the most important things is that you realize, at a deep level, that you are not an isolated island. You discover who you are in how you meet others, in the quality of your presence, awareness, and the care you bring into each moment. Not by defending an image you believe is who you are, but by daring to be in contact with and relate to something outside of you that at the same time reflects you. As we have noted earlier, whoever or whatever your thoughts believe you are, you reveal yourself in how you relate to something beyond yourself.
That sounds beautiful, but also challenging. Doesn't that mean I have to give up something?
You give up an illusion, not the truth of who you are. You let go of the belief that you must constantly gain or defend. What you gain is connection, meaning, and a deeper inner stability.
Is that why focusing too much on me often leads to emptiness?
Indeed. The ego is always hungry. No matter how much it gets, it never feels complete or gets enough. Connection, however, nourishes something more real in you.
So is life more about giving than getting?
At its core, yes. But not as sacrifice. Giving, when it comes from what you are, gives back through meaning, vitality, and belonging.
What happens when someone lives mainly from the need to get? For example, to get attention, validation, and control?
They live with fear of losing or of not getting enough. This creates defensiveness, selfishness, and separation. Even when they succeed, something essential remains unmet.
Does this way of living affect the body as well?
Very often, yes. Connection calms the nervous system. Fear and control activate stress. And long-term stress slowly erodes health.
So when doctors talk about health, should they also care about how we relate to others?
Some already do. Because reactivity, resentment, and chronic tension strongly affect stress levels. The body is honest. It responds to how we live, even when the mind tries to justify.
Is that why selfishness and reactivity never really feel good on a deeper level, even when our ego tries to convince us that it works?
Indeed. Because it goes against your nature. You are wired for cooperation, empathy, and care. When you live against that, something inside resists.
But my ego tells me I need to defend myself, my opinions, my identity.
The ego survives by convincing you that you are separate. It thrives on comparison and fear. But it does not care about your well-being, only about its own survival.
Is the ego always something bad?
No. The ego is the image you have of yourself, a mental structure built from thoughts and roles. It once helped you navigate the world. Like clothing, it serves a function, but you are not your clothes.
Interesting. I can see now why who we think we are so often feels threatened. It isn't what we truly are, but rather a thin shell, like clothing, something we, together with our thoughts, have taken on simply to get through life and relate to others. How does the ego defend itself in everyday life?
Through reactivity. Blame. Superiority. The need to be right. Irritation. Or to feel special. Or to feel like a victim. These are signals that an image feels threatened.
So when I feel offended, something in me is afraid.
Indeed. And what feels threatened is not your true self, but an image constructed by your thoughts, in other words, your ego. Seeing that already loosens its grip.
Is this related to what people call narcissism?
In part. We all have self-centered needs. What differs is the degree. Understanding this helps us stop demonizing others and start looking inward.
So even people with strong narcissistic traits are just deeply identified with an ego?
Often, yes. They defend a fragile image built to survive deprivation. Understanding this does not excuse harm, but it creates more space for compassion, instead of thinking in terms of I am good and the other is bad.
And when I label others, could that be my ego speaking?
Very often. Defining and categorizing others can serve as a way to protect ourselves from having to be honest with ourselves.
What happens when I stop identifying so strongly with my ego?
You react less and begin to notice that you no longer need to spend so much energy maintaining and protecting your ego. On a deeper level, you begin to see more clearly what truly matters in life, and more than ever, you start to recognize the value of taking responsibility for something that brings deeper meaning to your life. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to sense that love does not require defense or conditions.
That's incredible. It means that who we think we are, our ego, stands in the way of unconditional love. And that's why it's so difficult for us to have understanding, compassion, and to be loving all the time?
You are so right.
It truly motivates me to try living beyond my ego, beyond the I. I once believed I was, seeing it as nothing more than the training wheels I once needed to dare to ride. It's incredible that so many people still seem to keep the training wheels on, and even believe that this is how life is meant to be, like a caterpillar that never dares to leave the cocoon, discover its wings, or try what it is like to fly and be free. May I still ask? Could this be connected, in some way, to what the ancient Greek philosophers meant when they spoke of a good life?
Among other things, yes. Aristotle called it eudaimonia, living in alignment with virtue. Not ego. For Aristotle, eudaimonia wasn't about feeling good or getting what you want. It was about living in alignment with what is good and true in you. In practical life, it means becoming someone through whom goodness and a loving attitude take shape in everyday situations. In how you speak, listen, choose, and respond. You don't chase happiness. You live in a way where goodness becomes real through you. And that, according to Aristotle, is a life well lived.
So meaning doesn't come from success, but from contribution?
Indeed. From knowing that your presence made life better for someone else.
So who I am is revealed by what I bring into the world, and by how I live as a fellow human being?
Yes. You discover yourself, what is authentic in you, through how you relate. How you care, and how you contribute in relation to something beyond yourself. Through this, you don't just experience meaning. You begin to flourish. And realize your full potential. Rather than remaining confined within the cage your ego has built around you. I hope you begin to see that you can be so much more than you have ever been able to imagine.
I probably don't fully understand it yet, but I'm starting to see that, like most people, I've limited myself unnecessarily by identifying with an image of who I thought I was. We spoke earlier about it being more important to love than to be loved.
Indeed. Because loving connects you to what you truly are. Being loved matters, but loving transforms and heals more deeply. And if allowing yourself to love unconditionally feels too difficult, it may be a sign that you've become stuck in your ego. Try to remember. The ego once protected something vulnerable. Something that was still forming. Like a caterpillar. To survive, the caterpillar had to build a cocoon. The cocoon was not a mistake. It was necessary. It provided protection, structure, and safety when the world was still overwhelming. But the cocoon was never meant to be a permanent home. Imagine the caterpillar never leaving it. Clinging to what once protected it, out of fear of the unknown. It would never discover that it had wings. The ego is like that cocoon. Once a protective structure, created to help something fragile survive. But if you never dare to leave it, never question it, never let go of the image you've built of yourself, you may live your entire life as a caterpillar without ever knowing that you could fly. Freedom does not come from destroying the cocoon, but from understanding when it is no longer needed.
I really love the metaphor of the caterpillar, the cocoon, and what it might be like to fly and be free, in contrast to remaining stuck in what we believe we are. Could you offer an exercise?
With pleasure. Exercise 1. Noticing or softening the ego. Purpose: to become aware of how the ego shows up in everyday life, especially in moments of irritation, feeling offended, reactivity, or when you notice that you have difficulty listening or being present. Exercise: when irritation arises, when you feel a strong need to defend yourself, when you notice the urge to judge someone, or when you experience feeling offended or hurt. Pause fully. Do nothing. Fix nothing. Simply be present. Do not try to change anything. Do not analyze or explain. You may gently ask yourself the following questions. What is it in me that actually feels threatened right now? What am I trying to protect, defend, or maintain? Who do I believe I need to be, or who am I trying to be, in this moment and in this situation? What do I imagine is the worst that could happen if I don't follow my thoughts or defend who I believe I am? And what do I think will happen if I don't express everything I feel and believe the other has caused in me? Notice whatever arises. Your thoughts, bodily sensations, impulses, and even the suffering your ego creates when you do not comply with its demands. Whatever you think, feel, or experience, observe yourself in the situation you are in, and gently ask, who or what is it in me that is aware of what I am thinking and experiencing? Remind yourself, whatever you are experiencing, if it feels uncomfortable, this is an ego reaction, not a real threat or genuine need. It is simply the ego feeling threatened. The goal is not to suppress the reaction, but to see it clearly and to recognize what is actually causing it. Awareness itself already weakens the grip of the ego. Exercise 2. Purpose: to shift from ego-driven motivation, getting, to connection-based action, giving. And to notice how this affects your body and sense of meaning. Exercise: ask yourself, what small act of care, presence, or consideration can I offer today, without expecting anything in return? It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to carry an elderly person's grocery bags up to the 10th floor, or save half the village. It might be listening without interrupting, listening, not just hearing. Offering patience instead of simply reacting or following your impulse or irritation. Doing something kind without being seen or acknowledged for it. Showing consideration and trying to understand the person you are listening to, in situations where you would usually defend yourself. Afterward, pause and notice. How are you now? Has anything changed? Is there more space, warmth, calm, a more open mind? A deeper sense of connection? And greater presence? Does this feel different from serving the ego? You are not doing this to be good or well-behaved, but to experience the difference between living from the ego and living from connection and care. Over time, you may begin to notice that this way of being doesn't exhaust you. On the contrary, it starts to give you energy, nourish you, and bring a deeper sense of meaning into your life. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to step out of the cage you have been living in, just as the caterpillar must leave the cocoon, in order to fly and be free. Listening to this has been a valuable investment in yourself and your life, and if I may offer one more small piece of advice, try to become curious about how you react to the shortcomings of others. It is a powerful way of getting to know yourself. Focusing on the flaws of others does not create awareness. Turning your attention toward yourself, especially when your ego wants to criticize the other, does.
In this chapter, you explored who you are beyond identity, roles, and self-image. You were invited to question the sense of I you have learned to protect, and to notice what remains when that story loosens its grip. You also explored how meaning, connection, and well-being emerge not from defending an image of yourself, but from living in relation, presence, and care. Thank you for being with us. We'd really appreciate it if you leave a comment and give the video a thumbs up. It helps others find this video.